Hello all of you little demons, Jules here for WhatCulture.com, back again with another episode of the awesomely named and awfully hosted Tues Your Own Adventure, the weekly medieval themed format where I, the crown Jules of WhatCulture.com, take a list chosen by you, yes you, the person who is trying to beat the Guinness World Record of most hard-boiled eggs eaten. 72, 73... 72, 70, that's not gone well. Yes, you get to decide what list I dole out to you each and every week, and this week we have none other to thank than MJVD space G for their suggestion of video game mechanics that were, on paper, absolutely brilliant, but we all ended up hating. Because you see, in order to stand out in a crowded sea of video games that are released on a near continual basis, developers often have to think outside the box when it comes to making their game catch your attention, and by extension, the attention of your wallet. And therefore, questions about how to think outside the box become questions about the box itself. What if the box didn't exist at all? What if the box was motion controls? What if the box was motion controls, but actually only through a pre-order for season pass holders? And in that moment, we've lost sight of what we're talking about completely, as is most of my videos. What I'm trying to say is, it's easy to make a great idea on paper that will still fail to materialize into greatness for the player, and even those that sound utterly awesome can indeed lead to moments of frustration and backlash from the fan base, which is what we're talking about today. As I'm Jules, this is WhatCulture.com, and these are 8 awesome video game mechanics that we all ended up hating. And you know the drill by now, say hi to me here over in the live chat and put your suggestions for next week's episode down in the comments section below. But with that in mind, let's get on with this list, shall we? Number 8, the Persuasion minigame, The Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion. I tell you, I am an absolute sucker for any sort of video game that lets me charm and schmooze my way through the experience. If you have got a charm stat or some way to influence dialogue using some sort of minigame, then I am all for it, my dude. I love wringing extra loot out of NPCs, sidelining boring quests with a turn of phrase, and even getting bosses to back the hell down when they see my razor-sharp wit. Oh, my wordplay, it cut me. And yet when it came to Oblivion, an otherwise absolute masterclass of a game, Bethesda managed to bungle their persuasion minigame in such a specific way that it's still absolutely functional and oftentimes useful, but it's just so uncannily horrible to use over and over. Now, the idea behind the mechanic is sound. Use a rotating wheel with different values in order to charm whoever it is that you're speaking to. But the implementation and accompanying panopticon of pain seems to be the animator's attempt at conveying base emotions of pleasure and hatred, and it all makes for an utterly ridiculous experience. Like, it's so weird, just watch their faces and not the wheel when you're talking to them. Oh, I love this. Oh, I hate this. Oh, I love this. Oh, I hate this. And it's just like, imagine if that was real life, if you were trying to go and find somewhere to eat with a friend, and you're suggesting places, and you're like, do you want to go to McDonald's? And you look over and they're just like this. I'll put that in the maybe pile then, shall I? You're basically chatting absolute bollocks to them while hoping that your trivial dialogue of persuasion matches up to what they like. There's no skill, there's no finesse, and it's basically the same as the lockpicking minigame, but here the lockpick is somebody's face, and it's not always happy with you poking a metal rod up its nose. Number 7, the majority of the Batmobile sections, Batman Arkham Knight. Now, throughout Rocksteady's tenure with the Arkham series of video games, fans the world over threw adulation and praise at the devs for their attention to detail, amazing world building, and of course the impeccable blend of hard-hitting action and supremely enjoyable stealth sections. However, there was always one aspect of the games that players felt was missing, and that of course is the giant, absolute donker of a vehicle, aka the Batmobile. But in a case of, well, be careful what you wish for, we got it in Arkham Knight. And oh boy, did we get a lot of it. Previews for Arkham Knight pushed the Batmobile heavily as being one of the key reasons to own this game, with a huge focus on vehicular combat, as well as even a bit of mild puzzle solving. It all sounded too good to be true, and unfortunately for many, that turned out to be the case when the game finally dropped, as these sections quickly became a drain on the entire experience. Now, don't get me wrong, the mechanics of the Batmobile itself were wonderful, and the heavy bottom slide of the car felt wonderful to wrestle against, yet the Batmobile was used way too many times across the game, to the point where it became a bit of an eye roll when yet again Juicy Bruce over here announced that he'd need his car for this specific point in the mission. Nearly every aspect of the game features the Batmobile in some capacity, with even the Riddler creating a whole slew of new races to challenge players with. And as such, we had a taste of the sorbet that was a refreshing experience, and then realised that, oh, that's all we're eating for breakfast, lunch and dinner. I'll have some mango with my strawberry. It's 11 p.m. Oh, I just want to sleep. But the sugar rush is too much. Number 6, the Force Wall. Wipeout 3. Now, with the likes of red shells, homing missiles, and even swarms of killer bees, thank you very much, Sonic All-Stars Racing Transformed. You are a wonderful game, but bees, I did not need another reason to be afraid of them. When it comes to racing games, there are many, many ways to claim pole position while causing other racers to curse your name as they drown in sticky honey. But when it came to the otherwise fantastic Wipeout 3, the devs dropped the ball hard when it came to its power-ups, as here, more often than not, you'd be the one having the brakes put on. I say this because for some reason, the creative team decided that should you hit another racer with a power-up or weapon enough to damage it, instead of dropping onto the track and creating an obstacle for you, the racer in question would be temporarily flipped over to allow you to pass underneath. Which sounds great, right? Well, it is on paper, but the problem was that in practice, that moment in which it flips up and then flips back down again was ridiculously short, meaning that about 9 times out of 10, you'd be passing underneath the racer as they then flipped out on top of you. Sick. This, of course, impacted your own racing skills somewhat, because last time I checked, it is much harder to make a 3-point turn when you've got your rival flipping you off from your own front windscreen. Worse still, some of the power-ups themselves were actively dangerous for you to use, with the Force Wall especially dropping a barrier ahead of you, but causing all other racers who crashed into it to bounce backwards. Because that's what you want in a speedy game like this, right? For all of your rival racers to suddenly become hurtling backwards towards you. It's just kind of like, haha, take that! Oh my god, I am taking that! Number 5, using Rob to help you, Gryomite. Now, the NES era of video games is definitely what the MCU would have called the maddest timeline. You had an explosion of video game content that washed the sour taste of Atari's ruinous taint out of your mouths, and because Nintendo was leading the charge, that meant that some of these games came with weird and wonderful peripherals, including the one and only Rob, or Robotic Operating Buddy, who may well have been Nintendo's most insane product ever. Well, that is until the Virtual Boy, or the Nintendo Labo. Those were pretty insane. I mean, to be fair, it's still pretty mad. It's a robotic assistant that helps you play video games. Although I should rephrase that by saying it's a robotic assistant that helps you play video games. Because this guy here, well, he sucked. But you tell me on paper that this isn't one of the best sounding mechanics for your video game hobby ever, an actual robotic assistant. And yet, as anyone who's actually had the pleasure of Rob's help will be able to tell you, this product and the games that he was attached to were utterly abysmal. Gryomite best exemplifies the problems here, as in this title you were a professor trying to move through levels to collect dynamite that would explode if you ran out of time. Because that's what I want to do when I'm a scientist, go around my labs defusing bombs. But blocking your way were colour-coded pillars that Rob could help you shift by pushing the corresponding buttons. However, the act of getting him to move at all was a chore, making you pause the game to go into this pseudo-select screen to tell Rob what to do. And then you would wait upwards of a minute per button press that you wanted him to make for him to complete the action. Imagine that. It's like, there is a timer. There is dynamite. Rob, will you help me? Of course I will, dude. I've got your back, fam. Don't worry, fam, I've got this. You can trust me, dude. I ride or die for you. You and me forever, man. Let's Thelma and Louise this. One button, in a minute, in a game, with a time limit. Do I need to expand more on why this was actual hell? I thought not. Number 4, unlocking cars based on rankings. R4 Ridge Racer Type 4. Now here's a video game mechanic that must have sounded absolutely brilliant when the devs were chatting about implementing it into their game, but as soon as they actually put it into practice, it became as confusing as the title to which it was attached to. I mean, R4 Ridge Racer Type 4? Does that mean that the game is actually called Ridge Racer Type 4 Ridge Racer Type 4? Well, in R to the power 4, which is definitely what I'm going to call it now, you'd unlock cars for your collection based on the position in which you finished the tournament, meaning that if you placed first across all of the races, you'd get a first place-esque prize in the form of the fastest car and the most cash, which all sounds grand, right? Well, the problem is that some of the more desirable cars, and in fact some of the better cars in terms of handling and acceleration or braking power, were actually locked behind the second and third places, and the only way to get them was to go through the tournament again and place second or third respectively, meaning that you would have to, in some cases, throw the race in order to achieve the pole position that you wanted. Sick. Match fixing in a video game. I thought I'd seen it all, James. I thought I'd seen it all. Plus, you'd have to feel sorry for those questing for 100% of this game, as they'd have to do this multiple times on each event to complete their collection and unlock the final car of the game. Number 3, Calming BB, Death Stranding. Now, to say that Death Stranding is a video game full of half-baked but kind of brilliant ideas is kind of like saying that I will be a little bit chilly when those energy price hikes kick in winter. And I also don't have a radiator in my room, I've just realised that. In fact, trying to look at Death Stranding's list of unique and odd mechanics is like trying to read Homer's Odyssey, but all you've got to go on is paraphrases and key quotes that are written over an old groceries list for how weird some of them seem. Holding buttons to balance, multiplayer in the form of bridge building, weaponising your piss using Monster energy drinks, avocados? To be fair, that last one was just surprising because I thought we had some in the fridge. But I digress, which is actually what Death Stranding does a lot, introducing new mechanics on the fly that often lead absolutely nowhere near essential storyline missions. But one that unfortunately was tied directly into the experience was the monitoring of BB, your little bridge baby, or as it's known amongst many gamers, Baby Mario version 2. Now on paper, the idea of calming down a frightened child once you've taken a serious spill or encountered a horrific enemy should only serve to heighten the tension of that moment. You've just lost your packages, your baby is crying, it's all gone wrong. Except, let's just say that last sentence again with a different intonation. You've lost all of your packages, your baby is crying, it's all gone wrong. What about that is fun? What about that experience is fun at all? I mean, I know that deep down there is a desire within all of us humans to protect a small child, but at the same time, you just gotta think to yourself, okay, this is a gameplay mechanic I could definitely do without, because the screaming in my ears, it just doesn't end. It just doesn't, it's like tinnitus, but just more infantile. If you want to call it tinnitus, whatever, tinnitus, whatever. And unsurprisingly, it wasn't fun to have to use the motion controls to calm BB down for the 50th time, by which point this quirky method had officially outstayed its welcome. Number 2, don't forget to take your joy, or nothing will happen. We Happy Few. Now, I don't think I've been as disappointed with a video game as I was with We Happy Few when it launched in 2016. The state of the game back then was so disappointing, because while it's gone on from strength to strength, and it's been expanded by really quite generous DLC experiences that have been really well received, and the game has received a ton of fixes and tweaks. The game, as it stood 2016, the vanilla version, boy was it left wanting. It had a concept that was a stone-cold killer as well, of a society held in a perpetual state of drug-addled repression and was backed up with brutality. It told of a town divided by those who took their joy pills to forget and downers who were those that rejected the fantasy in order to live out in the wastes. As such, a lot of expectations were built up around the process of taking joy in order to fit in with the other pill junkies and how these mechanics would affect gameplay. Would you be caught short at a desperate moment and be chased out of town? Would you have to scavenge for them in order to stave off a beatdown? Well, the answer on paper was a definitive yes, but in practice was a resounding no. For you see, while joy dosage was important to get through certain gates and bypass doctors, that was the extent of its implementation, and the sheer abundancy of the pill meant that it was never really that hard to acquire. What was once an amazing piece of world building just became a chore, with all of the tension of the situation dissipating almost entirely. Hell, the fact that you could complete the game without taking joy once outside of a few story beats just shows how little they cared about this, which was such a shame because it had the potential to be one of the best things about this game. And that's why I hate it a little bit. And number 1, the Renbu system, Dynasty Warriors 6. So imagine that you're in the headquarters of Koei Tecmo, and all of a sudden, this dev slams through the door. He's sweaty, he's shaky, he's got a nervous look in his eyes, almost feverish. He grabs onto your shirt, and he pulls you closer, and you can see the sweat on his brow. His lips are quivering. He pulls closer to your ears, just brushing that bit there, just to make you go, what are you doing? And he whispers the words, but what if? Infinite combos. Well, you'd drop your Lubu mug. It would smash on the floor and your tea would go everywhere. Because that's how important it was to a Dynasty Warriors fan. I know it might not mean much to an outsider, but to a DW fan, or as we call ourselves, Mousse sommeliers, for we drink the Mousse like fine wine. This concept was enough to make my Dongzhuo turn into a Dongwo. Infinite combos in a game about pushing beatdowns like a drug dealer is pretty much the actual dream, so many, myself included, were hyped to the extreme legends when the Renbu system was announced for Dynasty Warriors 6. However, this soon became possibly the most hated mechanic in the entire series thanks to its implementation, which saw nearly every character share a base moveset that had to hit a certain hit chain in order to unlock new and more exciting moves. This, when coupled with the fact that enemies only appeared in small clumps, often meant that you'd be using basic strikes for far longer than our patience would tolerate, thus turning what were once warriors of legends into Saturday League dads scrapping it out in the car park after a few pints of the go-go juice. You know, just a fizzy, burpy mess with weak as piss punches. No thank you, mate. And there we go, my friends. Those were 8 awesome video game mechanics that we all absolutely hated. I hope that you enjoyed that, and please let me know what you thought about it down in the comments section below, as well as putting your suggestions for next week's episode. I love reading all of them, so thank you very much for this little dialogue that we have, this little back and forth, this little tete-a-tete that I like so very much. And if you want to chat to me further, you can do so over on the social medias at RutroJ, but the O is a 0, and you can follow James Dowes over here. I don't know what meme he's put up this week, but I'm sure that it is spicy indeed. But before I go, I just want to say one thing. I hope that you are treating yourself well with love and respect, my friend. That is always an awesome idea that is good when it's followed through on, because I just want you to live a healthy and happy life, to treat yourself with that love and respect that I know that you deserve, all right? You deserve love, you deserve happiness, you deserve success. All right, so just go out there, treat yourself well, treat your neighbor well, go out there, build bridges instead of burning them, and have a brilliant day, whatever it is you are getting up to. Big love from me to you, my friend. As always, I've been Jules, you have been awesome. Never forget that, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.